Hey, it's the end of the year, and as a way to celebrate the holiday season, I wanted to bring the top 10 episodes back to the front and showcase some of the best we've had to offer. And today we're bringing you the number 5 episode on the list with Jerome Myers and Nick Vu. And this was actually the very first episode that we released after our pilot. And so, for all intents and purposes, this is episode number 1 and still one of the top 5 in the entire podcast history. So hope you enjoy it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. Today we have Jerome Myers on this show and Nick Vu. Jerome Myers leads the Myers Development Group, which focuses on buying broken apartment building businesses and using innovative thinking and solid execution strategies to optimize the operational efficiency of the business. Currently, he's asset manager for approximately 90 units of workforce housing across Virginia and North Carolina, and he's on a mission to hold 1,000 doors by the end of 2028. He's also a real estate coach using the Myers method of multifamily investing and the host of 2 podcasts, Dreamcatchers and Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps podcast. Finally, he also volunteers on STEM boards, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, and enjoys traveling internationally. So Jerome, welcome to the show.
Brian, so excited to be with you this morning. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, not a problem, not a problem. I followed you for a little while, and when we decided to start the podcast, I think I've told you this before. You were the first text that went out. Hey Jerome, do you want to be on the show? I'm super excited to be here. Really, really am looking forward to hear what you have to say. So, with that, why don't you give us a little bit of your background? And tell us, who Jerome Myers is, and, walk us up to the point to where you decided to invest in apartments.
Yeah, man. So, first I want to start off by saying thank you for your service. My dad was a Marine, believe it or not. He was 17 when he joined the Marine Corps. He
Wow.
graduated from high school and went straight into the Marines, trying to get away from a pretty tough situation in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Mom out in Alaska, and they've been 2 peas in a pod ever since.
Nice.
But I start there because I come from being a son of a soldier and a stay-at-home mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people try to figure out how you're going to meet these wealthy people, how are you going to do these big deals. And I'm not somebody who came from a background where we had $1 million to start out.
So you're one of those kids that bounced around the country, and basically never really had a home.
No, so that part is really interesting. I lived in the
Mm-hmm.
same for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
Went to college. My father made the decision to, in some ways, hold back his career. So he did 2 one-year deployments
Mm-hmm.
to Korea, and that he avoided active duty combat time. He was always at home. He was responsible for getting the people over and coming back. He was a jump master as well as a military intelligence guy. And so he was the guy that got them there and got them back. It was pretty cool. So we stayed at Fort Bragg the entire time, believe it or not.
Nice. Well, appreciate his service as well. He laid a foundation for everything that, we currently do. So, yeah. So from there, tell us a little bit more about where you grew up. I think North Carolina is where it was, right? Bragg?
Yes, up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, not far from Fort Bragg. And then, I left, went to college, studied engineering, got a civil engineering degree, played football for 4 years at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. And then upon graduation, started out as a structural engineer. Did that for a few years, got on the fast track and was climbing the corporate ladder as quick as I could. And then 2009 happened, and one of my sponsors had me in a role, and I was doing it because he told me to do it, but I hated the job.
Yeah.
He got eliminated. I was stuck, and I was really upset about being stuck. I felt like a victim. I felt like it wasn't fair. I was still employed and everything, right? So you realize how privileged you sound when you say things like that. But, I thought I was on a rocket ship. I was going to be one of the youngest executives at the company ever. And instead, I got stuck in a job that I hated.
And your world got turned upside down right there.
Yeah. I eventually ended up leaving the power company and started doing some consulting. And then my last role in corporate America was building a $20 million EPC business for a construction company. And so I was employee number 2, and we had $0 billed. And by the end of the year, we had about 175 employees and $20 million in revenue. We were super profitable. I had P&L control. And
Hmm.
so at 30% profits there, and my reward for making all that money was laying people off for the first time, and that was a
Oof.
disaster. I hated it.
Hmm.
Remember hanging up on Christmas Eve with my supervisor saying, Jerome, you have to keep running the team. You better pick who you want, because if somebody else does, you may be disappointed. And so we did that, and then I said I'll never do it again. And sure enough, November came around. I had to do the same thing again, and I said I'm out. And so that's where I made the transition and said I'm gonna pursue real estate full time.
Okay. All right. So why did you choose real estate out of everything? I mean, civil engineering degree, why real estate?
Well, I chose real estate because when I was a sophomore in college and I realized I didn't want to be an engineer, but I was going to finish what I started, my buddy and I were sitting on the stoop. And so I was
Hmm.
paying I had two roommates. They were paying $395. Then downstairs, my buddy and his roommates were doing the same thing. And
Hmm.
so math, and the guy that owned the complex was making $700,000 a year.
Yep.
Never talked to him. We had no idea what he looked like. And we were like, well, this is what we want to do. We want to decouple our time from money.
Hmm.
And, but, going back to my roots, right? I didn't have attorneys and real estate investors and doctors and so on coming over to the house for dinner. So I had no idea how you actually get into space.
Yeah.
And so we spent the time in corporate America growing credit scores, some wealth, and we had something to invest when it was time for me to walk out the door. And so I just went back to that. I felt like if I could build $20 million business for somebody else, if I could just, build something that's $2,
Yeah.
$3 million for me, I'd be all right.
Yeah. Why not take your efforts, in building somebody else's company and build your own legacy, build your own company? Yeah. I mean, funny you mentioned that, I remember back in college, I was living in a 36 unit apartment building, and me and a couple of buddies who all lived there, we're doing the math ourselves. It took me 20 years to actually do something about it, but we all thought, man, this is what we need to do. We need to own apartments, but then life happened, so well, good. So you get into multifamily, you're a little bit tired of the corporate world. You're tired of, especially having to lay people off and give people the bad news. And you default on, you go back to apartments, something that you've enjoyed for a while. So tell us what about how you went about that, how you got back into, the real estate industry, and what you've done up to now.
Yeah, so it was a disaster. I went and started knocking on doors. I had no real education, and the banks. I was like, "Well, I got money, and I've
Hmm.
got a great credit score, 800. What are
Yeah.
you going to give me some money, right? So I can go buy this building." And they're like, "Yeah, right." And I was like, "Well, I got an engineering license, and I'm a certified project management professional. I got an MBA." They
Hmm.
say, "Yeah, so what?" And I kept going list of all the things I'd done in corporate America, and they didn't care.
Yeah.
And of the matter is I never signed a loan to buy a building. So
Mhm.
they weren't going to give me a loan to sign a building. And so I had to go fix and flip houses for a while. And while I was sitting on the stoop's important for me, right? I was sitting
Mhm.
on the stoop, guy pulled up. He said, I'm getting ready to do a flip down the road. Let me check out your finishes. And he's walking through and we start talking. He said, hey, do you know anything about that building in Churchill? I was like, I tried to buy that 4 or 5 months ago.
Mhm.
He's like, yeah, I'm getting ready to make an offer on it. I was like, please don't leave me out. And sure enough, he left me out, but the offer didn't get accepted. And so I finagled my way into that deal and sat in the asset manager role because I've been aggressively trying to learn how I was going to crack this nut and get into space.
Mhm.
And after we closed and the press release came out and my name was in the paper, every bank was ready to lend at that point. And
Yeah.
so created a relationship with the bank and left Virginia and came to North Carolina, back to Greensboro, where I went to college, and started buying. And we bought, we've tried to do 2 or 3 deals each year.
Mhm.
And, we've built a portfolio of about 90 doors at this point.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and you make a really good point. I mean, we had the same issue on our first, multifamily syndication. We went to get the loan, and that's exactly what they told us. We had a lot of experience as LPs. I mean, collectively, within Four Oaks Capital, we were LP on 900 doors. With probably about $400,000 invested, but it didn't count for anything. And each one of us had roughly 12, 20 years in corporate America or military service, and they're like, exactly. We got the same answer, yes, but what have you done in real estate? So we had to bring a partner in to satisfy that itch right there. But So you found your way into a deal. You got a little piece of the GP, ended up being asset manager, and your name's in the papers. And now all of a sudden you have that credibility. That's a huge thing in this business. It's just having that little ounce of credibility, because that opens doors with everybody. So up to 90 doors right now, and mostly, I think, Virginia and North Carolina, all of them Virginia and North Carolina.
Yeah, so we've done one deal in Richmond, Virginia, and the rest have been in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay. I like Greensboro. That's a nice little area. So nice. So what's next for you? What are your goals, in multifamily apartment investing in the next while?
Yeah, so we've got proof of concept. So everything we've done so far is just to understand what works, what doesn't work, and really getting good at our business plan, our strategy. And so now it's time to go to scale. And so we've got 120 unit development in the works. We've got a 220 unit deal that we're looking to take down later this year. And we've
Mm-hmm.
got a 6 unit where if we can get the price negotiated where we want it to be, we'll take all that down, and that all those deals are within 30 minutes of each other, Brian. So the
Nice.
goal is to be the market maker here in Greensboro. We want to own the market for workforce housing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we'll be able to do that. Being full time in the space allows me to get to deals quicker, and so
Yeah.
we run the deals, build a fence, decide whether or not we like the deal, and then we'll close it if we do. But if we don't, then we get out. So
Yeah.
quick, and then go through due diligence slow is our strategy.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said, a lot of economy in having all of your deals in the same location. So I assume, do you have the same property manager, or how do you guys do the management?
Yeah, so everything we've done so far, we have the same property manager. On these larger deals, we're considering using somebody that's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit bigger, just because
Bigger deals. Yeah.
they're used to running deals that big. And so we just got to see how it all works out.
Yeah.
But we've been pretty happy with our new property manager, and we stumbled and fell on our face the first time. We picked the wrong guy, and
Mm-hmm.
it didn't work out very well. But yeah, I mean, today, after making the shift and getting some good referrals, we feel a whole lot better about our situation.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about your podcast really quickly. You have two of them. Can you give us just a rundown of what each one is, and also how that helps you with your apartment investing business?
Yeah, so dream catchers, we tell the story of people who exited the matrix. You mentioned my
Mm-hmm.
shirt earlier. I took
Yep.
the bill back in 2010, started making some changes in the way that I walk the walk and experience life. And the goal is really just to give people those tools and tactics who realize they may be climbing up the wrong ladder and want to make a transition, or just want to make a shift in their life, whatever that is, and have them hear stories, not from the super successful people who are so far away from them that they can't relate, but
Mm-hmm.
somebody a few steps ahead of them, right? I want to, and Brian, you've been on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
You suck down your first deal and you were able to come on and share your story. And it's all about proximity.
Yeah.
Um, when I was starting on this multifamily journey, I didn't know anybody that owned apartments, right? So podcasting and YouTube were my mentors, and it was way I got around people who were doing what I wanted to do. And so that's what we work through and work with dream catchers.
Okay.
With multifamily missteps, I just got so tired of hearing people romanticize what multifamily investing was. Everybody makes money. There's never a bad deal. Nobody makes any mistakes when they go on the podcast. And I just got tired of it. I knew that it
Yeah.
wasn't true. Yeah, I have my experiences, and I listen to 40 hours of content each week already. And so just hearing everybody talk about how it was all great and rainbows and lollipops, I knew that wasn't true. And I wanted to bring operators on to share these war stories, because, when you hear everybody's doing well, it's exciting. But
Mm-hmm.
then when you get into it, becomes discouraging, because you ask, am I the only one that's struggling? And
Yeah.
so we will have some really great guests come on and share the ins and outs and the how-tos associated with multifamily investing.
Yeah. It's a great idea. It's much better to learn from somebody's mistakes than it is to do your own, So, by the way, I'm sitting on the invitation. You sent it to me a couple of days ago. I would absolutely love to be on. So, don't take it as a slight if I haven't answered yet, but, I'm going to sign up for that really quickly. The biggest problem I have with that podcast is deciding which one of my missteps do I focus on, because it's not a bed of roses, or maybe it is a bed of roses, and you just have to, look past all the thorns and see the actual beauty of it. But well, hey, that's great. Now, one more thing, I understand you have a Myers method. You also have a coaching program or mentoring program of some sort. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Brian, I get a lot of calls,
Mm-hmm.
and calls go something like this. I spent $25,000 to $50,000 for a high ticket coaching program, and I'm not getting any traction, and I'm not getting the support I need.
Mm-hmm.
You are the successful product of a high ticket coaching program. You've closed massive deals, and you've gotten the ball rolling really quickly. But there's a whole lot of people who go into those and don't actually get any results. And so I wanted to create something to allow people to get into multifamily with a focus on doing joint ventures instead of syndication, so that the desire that they have to create wealth for their family doesn't turn into another piece of debt, right?
Yeah.
If you go spend 25 to 50 grand on a high ticket program and you don't actually close a deal or several deals to make that money back, then you just have something big sitting on your credit card or lost something out of your retirement savings. And so we do something at a much lower ticket to allow people to get the education and wisdom they need in order to be deal finders.
Mm-hmm.
And we partner them in the community with folks who have experience if they've got a great deal, and then that experience usually brings capital to the deal. And so we've created this ecosystem so
Mm-hmm.
that people can go through, get the education they need, be able to talk the talk and show up and be taken seriously, and then run through the gamut of getting things done for those deals that are 500 to maybe 1.5 or $2 million. And then if they have some success there, and I think if you look at the track record of most of the educators, that's where they started. And then they move up and go do the $10 million deals. I liken it to going to take down Moby Dick,
Mm-hmm.
and you've never done anything but bought a single family home.
You got to go fishing first, fish for the small fish first. Yeah.
Get some tuna in the boat, and then once you get some tuna in the boat, then you can come back and go whale hunting, but get some tuna in the boat first.
I love that. Get some tuna in the boat. All right. Hey, well, thanks for that. So this is what we call an Ask the Expert part of our podcast series, where we bring on an aspiring investor and an experienced investor. So right now we'd like to turn some time over to our good friend Nick Vu, who is a recent graduate of the United States Naval Academy. So near and dear to my heart. I'm not a Naval Academy graduate, but been a Marine for 19 years. So like I said, very near and dear to my heart. He's a current graduate student at Purdue University, and he's also been picked up as an underwriter for the Veteran Pride Investment Group, and is actively looking for apartment complexes with his team. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thank you for having me on, Brian. And also nice seeing you again, Jerome. We met each other at a webinar or nice little networking sessions. It's nice seeing them here as well.
Yeah. So we've heard a lot about Jerome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to get into the multifamily arena.
So I guess you gave a little brief introduction already, but I guess I'm a recent graduate, and I had a lot more time here in Purdue than back in the Naval Academy. Like back then, my time was a lot more blocked off, and now it's a lot more free flowing. So I got started looking to more interests, side things, had essentially used my free time to better myself. And I came across real estate investing through the Active Duty Passive Income group, and I kind of learned all about passive investing and also how to invest as a military member. So I was planning on focusing on the kind of house hacking strategy with the VA loan.
Yep.
So I was planning to go into my next duty station, buy a house, live rent-free with roommates. And it wasn't until I met this group, Veteran Pride Investment Group, where I actually found my why. So originally I was planning on I definitely still want to obtain that financial freedom, but with this group, I kind of gained a bigger purpose. So this group is actually, they invest for the purpose of hoping to end veteran homelessness. So they actually donate 20% of the profits back to veteran causes. And I kind of really like that. It's like investing with a purpose.
Yeah.
So I kind of align my values with this team, and I want to get into real estate investing to help other people, whether it's housing homeless vets or even teaching people about the power of real estate. And I really like that mentality.
That's amazing. I mean, veteran homelessness is one of many good causes out there, and I take my hat off to you for definitely pursuing that. So what are your goals in the future as far as, acquisitions? Where do you see yourself 5 to 10 years from now with this multifamily thing?
I think in 5 to 10 years, I hope to achieve some financial freedom, maybe get replace my current income or have an equal amount of income through real estate investing.
Mhm.
And I also want to be in a level where I could actually teach people about this wonderful investment strategy. Like I've actually talked to a few other people, other junior officers, about our plans for the future and how we want to create a platform where we can teach other young officers like myself about real estate and lead them down the path to financial freedom through real estate. So my goal is to eventually maybe get to the level of maybe Jerome Myers and you yourself, where I have the knowledge and expertise where I can launch platforms to help other people.
Nice. Nice. Well, we have Jerome on the line here. I mean, he's apartment investing expert. What would you like
Yeah.
to ask him?
Yeah, of course. I've actually listened to a few of Jerome's podcasts, a few episodes of Myers Methods and also Dreamcasters. And I really liked his Myers Methods because it actually talks about those failures and errors that operators have made. So as like a new investor myself, what are some of the common mistakes that new investors make? What are some of the most, what things can new people like myself do to succeed in this business?
I like your question, and I think it's a wise one. I always boil it down to four things: knowledge, deal flow, capital, and experience. And so a lot of if you were going to go be a plumber, would you just watch a video on YouTube and then go try to sell your services to somebody?
Probably not. I'd probably like find someone expert, be like an apprentice or something.
Yeah, you go work with somebody who's done it before, or you go to some formal training. They taught you how to do a lot of great things at the Naval Academy, but for some reason, people think they can go buy multi-million-dollar businesses because that's what you're buying. You're buying a business that has real estate tied to it, off of watching videos on YouTube and listening to podcasts. And part of it's because Bigger Pockets been like anti-guru. And so a lot of people start there when they get into real estate investing, but you're running a business. This isn't like just buying a single family home where it's like, all right, I bought the home. Now I just need to put a person in it. I'm done. You've got a bunch of other things going on. And depending on how big the property is, you might have, on-site management and a bunch of other things. So I think knowledge is the first thing and it's foundational. What I would say is like everybody figures out these same four things. They just don't realize the order. And so I put these in order and I'll break down why I think this is the appropriate order here in a second. Then there's leads and deals. They have the same letters, but they aren't the same thing, right? A lot of people think, oh, I got a lead. A broker sent this to me. And because the broker sent it to you, it works. It doesn't work. The broker is putting it just outside of the reach of it working so that they can get the maximum price for the property that they're available to. They are getting paid by the seller to get them as much money as possible. And so when you understand that, now you realize, hey, I have to live with the decision I make with taking this property down. And so let me make sure that I underwrite it to a place where when those mistakes happen, I actually have some cushion. When, somebody moves out in the middle of the night and I didn't expect it, I have something to fall back on. Because if you make it so that everything is rainbow and lollipops, you are going to be writing checks to pay for things that you didn't anticipate writing checks for. And it's no fun to write a check for a mortgage. I've done it several times. And, mine wasn't as big as Brian Burke's, but Brian Burke came on Multifamily Missteps. He talks about writing a $15,000 check for 3 years to pay for a mortgage for a property that wasn't performing. And not everybody has those types of resources. And so you just got to be careful, especially if you're bringing other people's money into the deal, to make sure you have the cushion necessary.
I'll tell you, my second single family investment, I was putting in $500 to $600 a month to make sure I made my mortgage payment. So, you struck a chord with me on that one. I mean, $6,000 to $7,000 annually to keep that thing afloat.
Yeah.
Good, very good point.
And so I appreciate you offering that because I call it, you either have alligators or you have geese. Geese lay eggs, alligators you keep feeding. And you can't have too many alligators in your real estate portfolio before you're working just to have a real estate portfolio. Real estate portfolio is supposed to lay eggs. You're not supposed to have to keep feeding it. So just keep that in mind. And if you underwrite it right, it'll all proportion out with the right percentages. And so then you're looking for experience. You want experience so that you have somebody look over your shoulder. I spend a ton of time consuming content because I didn't want to get something wrong that I was supposed to know. And the fact of the matter is, it didn't matter how much content I consumed. I wasn't going to be able to get everything. And so having somebody who's been there and done that to look over your shoulder and say, hey, watch out for this, or you might want to think about that, is really, really valuable. And this big deal that we're looking at right now, I had conversations with one guy that had 2,000 doors. I'm having a conversation today with a guy that's got 6,000 doors. I talked to 2 or 3 other people. I talked to a property manager that manages about 1,500 and another one that manages about 4,000. I talked to all of those guys about this one deal to get their perspective on if it makes sense and why to do it. And, that just gives me confidence because, once you take possession of the property, it's your problem. Nobody else, and you got to deal with it and you've got to do whatever it takes to get through it so that you can get out, even if that means writing a check at the closing table to get somebody else to take it off your hands. And then the final thing is capital. A lot of people say they can't get into the space because they don't have the money. Money is chasing experience and deals. I do not believe that you get money in a deal because you've got a great deal. You get money in a deal because you have experience and a great deal. And, everybody who skips that experience piece is not telling you the whole story, because nobody wants you to learn with their money unless they're friends and family. And so, and not even friends and family are excited about that. How awkward is it if you lose money at Thanksgiving when, your mom put in her retirement savings in your deal, and you got to look at your mom like, I can't pay you back because I don't have any money and the deal flopped. So I don't know what to do. And so money capital is looking for experience in deals. And so I follow that order. Get educated, because that allows you to speak intelligently and evaluate deals. And then once you evaluate those leads and find some deals, you want to go share that with some folks that have experience. And usually those experienced people can connect you with capital, and they'll keep you in the deal for finding it because you did the legwork. Deals are at a premium. Capital is a commodity.
Nice.
Awesome, thank you for that. I've learned a lot. And I guess going back onto education, what are some of your worst failures that you've had, and how'd you recover from them? And also, what would you have done differently if you had the opportunity?
Yeah, I probably would have went and got some formal education, somebody who curated the content for me. Spending 40 hours a week consuming podcasts, books, and YouTube wasn't the most efficient way for me to do it. And then it gets redundant. And so now you're just looking for that 10% that's a little bit different. And so I really wish I would have went through some program that laid everything out for me, and then I just supplemented what I learned as my base knowledge. It was really fun listening to Michael Blank and then Rod Khleif and then this John Kasman and then all these other educators, and learning their approach and then trying to jam it all together. And everybody didn't agree with everybody. Everybody's got their little tweak, and the fact that we chose to do joint ventures instead of syndication threw a lot of stuff out the window for me. And so, that for me is probably the biggest piece. I would have done that differently. Biggest mistake, one of the ones that I think is pretty glaring and idiotic is I modeled the taxes on a property that we were buying for $800,000 at $1,000.
Ooh.
Body knows that
Yep.
that's wrong, right? And I put that business plan in front of the bank. They didn't have a problem with it. I put it in front of several other partners. They didn't notice, and I left a zero off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we closed around the time when tax bills come out. I thought the attorney paid the taxes in closing. He didn't. And so we get a bill in March of the following year with interest, because the tax bill never got sent to us. It got sent to the property, and they didn't even put a unit on the property. And so we paid the interest for being late, as well as a late fee, in addition to it being $9,000 higher than what we expected. And so fortunately that property has some decent revenue, so we were able to take care of it. But, just making a $9,000 mistake because you made a rounding error or you didn't put something in the model right is, indicative of somebody who didn't have the proper oversight and was modeling something and, just missed something that was really, really glaring. I mean, it's a big mistake. And, when I go back and look at that model, I'm like, man, like my expense ratio is like 28%. Like I'm killing it. I'm going to make a fortune. And the reality of the situation is we're operating that building at like $200 a month per door, which is really, really low. But there's no way I'm ever going to get to my pro forma expenses.
Yeah.
It's just not mathematically possible. And so now I've got to do something on the revenue side in order to get my NOI so that I can actually achieve the targets that we set out for in the deal. And I think we're going to be able to do that. I think the other thing that's probably really interesting and it's something to watch out for is make sure that you put more contingency in. It doesn't matter. Every deal that I've done so far, it didn't matter how much I thought it was going to cost or how long I thought I was going to take. Even after I added the fat on it, I was still wrong, right? So put some more on it. Put some more money in the bank. Extend out the time to get things done a little bit longer. Even if you think you're done, just put some more on it. And you don't want to do it to the point where you kill the deal, but you want to have some more in there. And here's another example. The very first deal we did, we thought we were only going to have to do indoor units on the AC. So half the building had a central HVAC, the other half didn't. And so we were putting full units in on the ones that didn't, and we were just adjusting the configuration of the ones that did. And so the ones that we were adjusting, we thought it was going to cost us about $2,500 to do it. Turned out we had to pull everything out and start over. And so imagine a $2,000 mistake over 25 units. It gets expensive pretty quick.
Yeah, that could ruin your CapEx budget right there.
We blew it out the water, right? And I'm glad that the bank didn't give me the loan by myself because I'd be bankrupt today, right? If I didn't have the partners in the deal that I had in the deal, I would have been out of the business on my first deal. And I think a lot of people get to this place where like, I'm just going to save my money and put in a deal. And because I do that, I'll get my experience that way. That experience that you get that way can put you out the game permanently. And so I deeply encourage folks to like spend the money on some education up front so that they don't run off the road and destroy everything, because it's an unforgiving business. And there's a lot of people out here who will do whatever they can to make a buck. And if you don't know what you're doing, they're going to take advantage of you. And it's not that they're bad people, but everybody has the opportunity to get the education or get some coaching or to get somebody in the space that can help them not make terrible mistakes. But if you're willing to overpay, they'll be glad to take your money.
It's awesome. Yeah, thanks for that insight. Again, I've learned a lot from that as well. So I guess there's another question that kind of maybe unique to my situation. Like as someone from the military, I'll need to eventually balance my military career and aspirations to become a multifamily operator. With my goals of becoming an operator. So what advice do you have people maybe those balancing a W-2 or even my situation as well, like those starting off their military careers with this multifamily business? And Brian, feel free to chime in as well, because with your experience, you probably have a lot more too.
I'll let Jerome go first, then I'll add in on the end.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And so I don't believe in balance, right? I believe in integration. I think you have to be the same person in all the places that you go if you want to live authentic life. And so when you're at work, you got to do the work stuff, but there may be times where you need to call brokers. There may be times where you need to take a break to go visit a property, and you've really got to be willing to do whatever it takes. And it's different with the military because you guys usually have to PT in the morning, but a lot of people, they don't start their day till 6:30 or 7 o'clock. A lot of people that I know that built real estate businesses while they were working full-time jobs, they have a 4 a.m. start. And then they do 3 hours before they do work for somebody else. And then they work all day, might do something at lunchtime. And then they spend the balance of that time in the evening after doing some stuff with family. They've got that 8 to 11 time frame where they're working on the business. And so basically they got 2 full-time roles that they're working on in order to get the wheels off the ground. The other thing that I think is probably really valuable is stacking. So if you're a music listener, replace that with podcasts and books, right? And so your commute, you want to use that for education. If you are a TV watcher, you want to replace that with education stuff and maybe use it as a reward or a treat for accomplishing something versus just indulging in the leisure. There's not a whole lot of time for just hanging out and watching the game on Saturday. Your weekends are going to be where you make up that extra 2 hours that you can't get during the week if you're doing, 3 before and 3 after. That other 2 or that 10 for the week comes up over the weekend. So just be really, really diligent about your time. And I would say don't take on additional responsibilities. If you know your goal is to exit, then you want to keep your responsibilities for building something for somebody else really tight, right? So you're walking out at 5, right? You're not doing the extra hour, or you're not just guarding the desk for the sake of being there, unless you're working on your own stuff, right? Um, that I think that's probably the best way to do it. And with that said, though, the job is usually what's funding your real estate ventures and endeavors. And so you want to make sure that you're doing a great job so that you're maximizing the amount of money that you can make in that role. It's probably a little more structured with the military than it is in a corporate role. But you want to remember that job is your investor, it's your first investor in the deals.
So, I think I love everything Jerome said, and I'm just going to piggyback on most of it. I don't think I'm going to bring up anything new, but, as far as your job, I mean, you're active duty Navy, you've made a commitment, and frankly, there's a lot of things in public law that are going to dictate, how you take care of that job. But one thing that I'll tell you is, if you don't do the best you can in that job, that job is going to also give you a reputation. If you have a reputation of being, the lazy, slothful JO or junior officer who's, always got his mind somewhere else, you're going to have a hard time convincing your friends, your peers, and everybody around you to invest in your apartment deals. So like Jerome said, when you're at work, you've got to dedicate yourself to that job and be the best you can be the best sailor you can be the best naval officer that you can be. And then when you switch to real estate, same thing. You've got to give 100% to that real estate as well. What I've done is, I decided to ride the Metro to the Pentagon every day. So I get on the Metro every day. I pull out my iPad, I pull out my phone, and I'm typing something out. I'm working on emails. I'm working on content. There's just a million things that I'm doing on that train ride every morning that are pushing the business forward. And when I take vacation days, to work on real estate right now. And that's something that I really recently started doing. But in the military, we get 30 days a year to take off, which is quite a bit. So 30 days a year. I'm taking a day here to underwrite properties. A day there to catch up on investor phone calls. 3 days there to drive down to North or South Carolina to do due diligence. So it's something that you just really have to like Jerome said, make sure you're taking advantage of all your time. And then the other thing, I try to keep myself competitive, in the military, and competitive for promotion, competitive for command. But when I decided to do, multifamily, when I decided to do real estate full time, I had to make the hard decision. So I took my name out of the command hat. So there's a board every year that decides who which lieutenant colonels are going to be battalion and squadron commanders. And I looked at what my goals were, and I had done well enough to get promoted to lieutenant colonel over 15, 18 years. Been 19 now, but I had to make the decision. What's more important for me long term. And like Jerome, we didn't mention it here much today, but he talks a lot about it in Michael Blanc's podcast. I had to burn some ships. I really had to burn some ships, and I had to say, I'm going to end my career right at the 20-year mark. Real estate is my only backup, and so I am now leaving my job at 1700 or 5 o'clock every day. So I do what I'm supposed to do while I'm at work. I give them 100% of my time while I'm there, but it's one of those things where you really have to look at what your career pattern is going to look like as an officer versus and I mean, use the word Jerome says he doesn't like, and balance that with the real estate. But anyway, that's my take. So let's final parting shot on this one. Let's Jerome, how can listeners contact you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if they're interested in our education platform, it's myersmethods.com, MYERSMETHODS.com. If they want to connect with me personally and just ask questions, I'm on LinkedIn, Jerome Myers, Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay. And that information will be in the show notes. So, if you didn't write that down, just, go to the show notes and it'll all be there with links and everything. Nick, how can listeners contact you?
Definitely. You can email me at nick@rivucapital.com, or you can also go to veteranpride.org. That's what organization I work for right now. You can also contact them through that website. So please contact us.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jerome, Nick, thanks for coming on the show. Jerome, you gave some excellent tips, and, as always, my friend, it's great talking to you. And, Nick, it was great to talk to you. I learned a lot of really good things about you, and I'm excited to see, how many veterans, you put, roofs over their heads with. So once again, thanks a lot, everybody. And, that's a wrap for today.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call a Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.